Hi, Kaz. Your dad sent me your questions about publishing. And as you get into the 11th grade here, it's a good time to be thinking about all this stuff, your future. You're not quite on that precipice of going into your senior year and having to really think, like, what do I do when I get out of here? So this is a really good time to be homing on your craft, I think, personally. We have a lot in common, actually, because, like, I actually wrote I started writing when I was a kid, younger than you, and I'm sure you've been writing, telling stories and stuff, but it sounds like you're getting your act together. So you asked me a few questions. I hope you don't mind if I make this public for people to see my responses. I feel like I'm getting to that point where I probably come across as very old to you now. I just made a video about turning 40. And I probably should just give what I have as far as experience goes to you and anyone in your shoes, whether they're in high school or elsewhere, looking to be a writer, to be a creative of some sort. Today we're going to focus on writing because that's what you specifically asked me about. I have written a whole bunch of books. I should have probably had those prepped in case anybody watching this, including you, doesn't really know what I got going on as far as books goes. But these are the books that I have written and published. I've written about 12, I think, in total. Only one of which is nonfiction, which is going to be this one here. This is a stack of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books, 9 of which have actually been published and available for purchase. Only one of which is available for purchase now, which I'll talk a little bit about why I decided to do that here in a second. And then this one is actually a handwritten book that I did when I lived in Paris in like 2012. It's a handwritten book on the history of magic in my world, in the fiction side of my world. But this one, Sea of the Unknown, is the one that's still available if you want to go read that and see if you even want my advice, because maybe you read this and you're like, this guy's terrible. I don't want to read this guy's books. And then why would I take his advice? Why would I take his advice? It's an important thing. Your dad made a comment about liking my 40 whatever tips on turning 40 kind of a thing. And the very first thing is don't take advice from somebody who doesn't have what you already want. And if this pile of books is where you're angling for, then go for it. Also, there's just going to be us chatting. Like, I'm not really going to worry too much about the fine tuning of this video. We're just going to get into it. And I am going to try and keep an optimistic tone as much as I can. But I want to be honest with you, too, that the state of writing, whether that's in the world of publishing, AI, I've been wanting to make a video about how Meta allegedly stole those 4 of my books. 3 of them really, but one of them twice. So my original trilogy, they stole my worst books, and that's kind of messed up, right? To train their model, there's a whole thing. You can read an article in the Atlantic that I'll post below. So we're in this really weird time where the value of creative work is being really rapidly undermined. And if you're asking questions about publishing, which your first question is what are the pros and cons of self versus traditional publishing, if that's your very first question, it leads me to believe that you want to do this for a living. You want to write books for a living, or storytell for a living, which I think is great. That's what I've always wanted to do my entire life. And the way that I grew up, that seemed like a reasonable thing to want to do because the world that I grew up in lauded, like it was the beginning of this explosion of television into new eras. We've seen successive golden eras of television. Movies when I was a kid, like I remember watching Jurassic Park come out when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I went to watch it multiple times in the theaters. You know, like this epic time of the mid-budget movie, of DVDs, like video rentals, all these things that are gone now that were an economic model that drove an industry that is now struggling without it. And as a result, publishing has been suffering from this because of the Kindle and a number of other things. And now I guess AI and piracy and all these things coming around as well. So it's a tricky time, and there's not a lot of money in publishing to begin with. So to answer your first question there are 6 questions here for those of you who are unaware. I'm going to get through all of them. I'm going to try to be concise. Traditional versus self-publishing. The history of it used to be that self-publishing was seen as like vanity publishing because you couldn't get your book sold anywhere, and the only way to get it in print was to go to a publisher that would print 1,000 copies of it. And a lot of people would end up with just piles of books in their garage that they were trying to hand sell. It was impossible. The cool thing is that with the Kindle and with the rise of print on demand, so the ability to publish a book as soon as somebody orders it and not publish any more of them, is that you have an opportunity to go out there and see if your book has legs, even if a traditional publisher wouldn't go for it. The reason that I went with self-publishing is twofold. The really honest answer, a big part of it, is because I was really scared of rejection. I was really, really scared to shop my book around, to get rejected by 100 agents, to go through that whole process. I was pretty fragile. Like, my ego was pretty fragile, and I didn't think that I was going to be able to handle that. And I'm terrible at self promotion, and that's exactly what you have to be. It's what you got to do for a minute there to get an agent and hopefully go on to get an editor, published, all this kind of stuff. The other side of it is that I really like building creative projects. As you can see, like, some of these are really collaborative projects. Like Into the Nanton here required, working with artists and just putting something together with a team. I had a voice actor that did the audio version of this. I really, really like putting together projects. I like building businesses. And so the biggest difference probably between the two is the level of responsibility you have to build the thing, which is a lot easier with all the tools that are available now to get your ISBN, to do cover design, interior design, to get the edits done. There's a lot that streamlines this that when I started wasn't there. So the barrier to entry there is lower. What's very similar about them now is that you have to sell it yourself. Or at least you have to expect to sell it yourself. A lot of publishing deals that get handed out are done based on audience. Do you have an audience? Do you have a social media audience? How are you going to move books? Because there are going to be books that get bought that a publisher really believes in, that they're going to put a lot of money behind and they're going to really push. But that idea of like having a book tour, like all these things that we associate with being kind of like the best-selling author, what we've seen in movies, what we've seen TV, kind of the fantasy that we have. I probably should have forewarned that if you're in this for the fantasy, whoever's watching this, maybe don't watch this video because I might be breaking the fantasy for you. But the thing is that was already kind of a rare occurrence for like only the upper echelon of authors to be sent on like a book tour to get a real marketing push behind them, to have a real budget that would support their book. Now the so much of it, and I have a lot of friends who have gone the traditional publishing route, there's going to be a very small advance. And usually the smaller the advance, the smaller the help that's going to come with pushing that book. So the responsibility for selling the book is going to come down to you. It's going to come down to the audience you can build, the work you're willing to put in for the self-promotion to really move the needle on that. And that does raise the question of, well, what then does the publisher bring to the table that you can't get on your own? The biggest thing probably is, well, there's two things in my mind, and I'm sure there'll be some comments on this below. The two things in my mind, one is going to be traditional validation, that idea that you have like Penguin or Random House, or although there's also a lot of consolidation happening in publishing, so who knows what imprints and what publishing houses are even still open when you're watching this video. But that idea that you have like a publisher behind you, there's still weight behind that, I think. Not as much as there used to be. It's not as dramatic of a difference as there used to be, but there definitely is still weight to that. The other thing is getting into bookstores. You're not going to get into bookstores nationwide without a publisher behind you doing that distribution. So that's really important. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get you like front and center. There are a lot of books that get published and then end up 3 aisles deep, 4 rows back on the bottom shelf with just the spine showing, right? So I wouldn't necessarily rely on bookstores to sell your book. Again, you're going to be the one that has to encourage people to go into the bookstore, find it, and buy it. So getting into bookstores and getting that validation are two of the really big elements. And then, of course, somebody's probably screaming at their screen, like you get an advance from the publisher as well. Those advances are pretty small. So two things often, sometimes they can be big. I know some people, so I have a friend on my shelf here. I cannot tell you how much this person got in their last book deal, but I can tell you it was actually a mind-numbing amount of money. But even that person would tell you a large sum is something that if you're an author, you're going to have to live off of for quite a while. And also gets broken up into 3 parts. So when you get an advance from a publisher, it gets paid to you usually in thirds. Traditionally, maybe things have changed again. I've been out of the game for a minute, but you're going to get a third when you sign with the publisher. You're going to get a third when you deliver the manuscript as finished, not your first draft. They're going to pay you once they've been like, yes, we accept this. We're going to go ahead and go to print. And then you get the final third when it goes to publication. And in publishing, that can be years. So if they offer you, let's say $100,000, which I know is going to sound like a lot of money, but maybe it doesn't, but I imagine if you're going into the 11th grade, sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. It's not a small amount of money. But if they pay you that like 33,000 up front, you got to live off of that maybe for a year as you go through the process of finishing your manuscript. And then you're going to get another payout and then another payout. So like if you can live off of about 30 grand, which a lot of people can, in the States, it sounds like that's getting harder and harder. I think that used to be like a very, very reasonable thing. I'd be very happy to get that. Don't get me wrong. That'd be amazing. But it doesn't necessarily go as far as it once did. And it can be really tricky to know exactly when that money's going to come in, which can make it very hard to plan. I know friends that have had to wait a lot longer than they anticipated for a check to come in, which can put you in a very, like, cash flow is a word that maybe you've heard thrown around. It's a very, very serious thing when you're your own business. And so it can get very, very tricky. That 100 grand, the reason that I'm kind of throwing that out there as an easy number is a huge number. For the average author that I knew in fiction, when I was on like the circuit doing like conventions and stuff, they're getting maybe $5,000 as an advance. So you can imagine getting $5,000 over the course of a year to 2 years to 3 years. And that's not even talking about like orphaning a book. One of my biggest fears, one of the other reasons that I didn't want to go with traditional publishing is I didn't want to run the risk of losing my own intellectual property. So I guess I'm a little bit of a control freak, especially when it comes to my creativity. I really, really want my characters, my world, my books, everything to remain within my control. And because I have really big ambitions, I may have a pile of 9 books here, but I have like 50 that need to get out of my head somehow. And I don't want that to go wandering off without me. And something that's happened to a number of people I know, and far more people that I don't know, is like an imprint or a publishing house. So there's a whole structure there. But basically imagine like you have a publisher that has purchased your book. They have the rights to purchase your book. And in the process of getting to market, they go out of business. And then it takes who knows how long for them to sell the business off, to find somebody who's going to take them on, to reshuffle who's working for them, what editors are even still working for them. In that process, maybe the editor who was working on your book leaves, but the rights stay with the publisher. And then they have to find a new editor who's willing to take it on. But that editor, whoever they bring in, already has a book of business. I don't know if you'd say that, but they already have a roster of books that they are working on. They may not want to take that book. So this is how a book gets orphaned and may end up lost in the ether for years. And you never know what's going to. So that hopefully is rare, but does happen. So there are a number of things like that to be aware of that could happen. So the indie publishing side of things, it's more work up front for you. You do have to build a business. You do have to learn how to run a business. You have to learn how to do so many different things. But for me, those were skills I wanted to learn, and they've been wildly helpful, very helpful, and they've been really impactful. Words, you get it. Like, I'm very, very grateful that I've learned all those things and I've applied them to my creative career as a whole as I've continued on. But it wasn't easy. And it certainly is not a path to getting rich quick. I can tell you that much. For the very, very few in all these domains, occasionally somebody gets really lucky or is really, really, really skilled and has already put in a decade and it just looks like they succeeded overnight. That's one thing to be aware of too. Don't be very wary of the idea of overnight success. Most overnight success happened over the course of a decade. So be aware of that as well. But I think that's enough on the traditional versus the rest of these are going to go much faster. Don't worry. How do you, let's see, the number 2 is, do you have a process for writing long-term stories? Which I think you mean like long-form stories. I used to be a pantser, so there's 2 camps traditionally on this. So you have pantsers and planners. I used to be a pantser where I would just sit down and I would write and I just see what came out. I always have an ending in mind, so I always start with like an ending or a really, really impactful like climactic scene in mind, and I explore that a little bit, and then I try to figure out backwards, how did I get here? That's how I used to do it. That's how I wrote most of these books. And then I realized that like I wanted to plan a little bit more, and the reason that, okay, so we'll get into why I unpublished all these books. The reason I unpublished them is because, like I said, there's a good 50 of them that need to come out, and I would like them to be TV, movies. I don't even know if TV or movies are going to exist in the next few years. Who knows? So like, we'll see what happens with how everything's going. Basically, when I unpublished them, it was because my first 3 books were rough. They were really bad. And your first book is usually, at least your first draft, is not going to be great. We have a lot to learn. My first book I was so proud of it, and I still am. I'm so glad that I finished it. But man, is it not worth, let's rework that. The bigger thing was like wanting to, because these 50 books, they all are in the same universe, and I want them all to tie together. I want to make sure that all the right pieces are in place, the hints, the clues, the whatever, to make this something that if you want to read the entire body of work, it becomes a very satisfying puzzle to piece together. And that's just going to require a lot more work. So that's why I unpublished them, was because I wanted to take a step back. And now I'm becoming very much more of a planner, where the actual writing process could still be a little bit pantsy. Let's explore and follow things. But I'm taking the time to write out a skeleton of the whole world. So there's, with Into the Nanton, there were some books that I wrote that went between seasons, because these were released in seasons, that were kind of like behind the scenes looks at different characters within the story. And I came up with one of these about a year and a half ago, and I've been playing with my mind, and I decided to synopsize it. And it was the most amazing experience. It was so cool. It was really fun to write a synopsis of a book, get through it, play with it. And I was like, okay, well, I have to write this. And I was like, no. Let's do that for the whole thing. Let's try to synopsize everything, make like a master tome of all the stories. Because then I'll know for sure, oh, this works, like front to back, chronologically, this actually works and makes sense. But also, hopefully I'll be able to collaborate in the future, and I'll be able to bring on like a director for a short film or for a TV series or for a movie. And if that is going to be the case, I'm going to hand these things off. I need to know for sure what's in here and what, like if you want to make a musical out of this story, great. You can make a musical or a space opera or a black and white, like film noir piece, whatever, as long as it fits within the existing universe and these few things happen. You know what I mean? Like, here's the character that has to say this one thing, and here's this character that has to kill this character, or whatever. Like, these things have to happen, and outside of that, how you go about doing it is fine. So making it a more collaborative, like making it more possible to be collaborative, if that makes sense, while also maintaining the integrity of the canon. That was a lot. That was a lot more than I intended. But that's as far as process goes, just make yourself right, basically. Which actually might answer question number 3, which is how do you keep consistent motivation? I think motivation, for me, motivation is driven by the fact that, like, if I found out I had cancer tomorrow and I only had 6 months to live, I would quit everything. Like, you would probably see very little of me on the internet. I would literally just focus everything I had on writing these stories and getting as far into them as I possibly could, because I just want them to exist in the world, like they need to. It's a drive of mine. The reason that I'm not as hardcore on that is because I don't have a backup plan. Like, I don't have family that can support me. I don't have, like most people, right? Like, I got to work. I got to work to make a living. And I'm trying as hard as I can to build a business that will support me in spending more and more time writing, and maybe we'll actually end up someday making enough money to invest back in the art to create more art. Like, I don't want to get rich just to get rich. I want to get rich. I'm not very money motivated. I want to get rich just to make art, make cool things. And that's what I need to remind myself of on the regular to stay motivated to work. But as far as writing, I don't really suffer from a lack of motivation to write. However, if you do struggle with motivation, I would argue the answer to that is discipline. Just show up consistently and write. Even if it's just a sentence a day, make yourself write something every day, and you'll be surprised how that adds up over time. And it won't all feel glorious, it won't all feel inspired, but inspiration is not always there anyways. And if you're showing up every day and giving inspiration something to work with, then you're going to end up finding yourself inspired a little bit more often than not. Number 4 was any tips for marketing. I mean, social media. And at this point, like, it's hard. It depends. I don't know what you're writing. Like, if you're writing something nonfiction or something that has like an audience that's looking for whatever information, you can make yourself an expert in that domain by sharing what you know and building that up. If not, you just got to grab attention however you can, more or less, and build that up over time and share your love of what you're doing over time and bring people along for that journey. But really, at this point, social media is king. Video is king. So if you can start making reels, TikToks, move your way into a YouTube space, it's a very competitive landscape, but it's still very doable. I've been thinking about making a video about, like, I've been meaning to make a video about how my social media stuff works. And I'm not even that good at it compared to so many people out there. But it is, I mean, at this point, it's that, and it's like trying to get yourself, I guess, into, like, there's a whole, you can do a whole realm of media stuff, but, like, honestly, social media, it's free to put yourself out there, to build something as it currently stands for return on investment, I don't think there's anything better than doing that. I have my I have questions and qualms and whatever else, but I think that's the way to go for now. Number 5, if you realize an idea in your story isn't working, what are the best ways you have to work through that? I think there's no easy answer to that. I guess it depends on what's working, not working, and why. If you're trying to solve a puzzle, if you're trying to figure out like how do my characters get from here to here, often working backwards makes the most sense. Like if it's a murder mystery, just know who did it and then start covering it up on the way back. But if you've got an idea that you think is really cool, you love something, I think this probably comes to the classic kill your darlings. You have to be willing to take ideas that you really love and throw them out if they're not working. Everything needs to serve the story, and if you have something, whatever it is, that's not serving the story, that's slowing you down, that is making it harder, like there's a good chance you just need to cut it, which is one of the hardest things to learn to do. And it's hard to do all the time, but that's another discipline you build up. They're like, I think I just need to cut this. And if it's something that really needs to be in there, you'll know. You'll find a way. And if that's the case, then the other answer I would have would be give your subconscious time to work through it. So go like do some chores, wash some dishes, mow the lawn, do something with your hands that occupies your body and, that part of your mind. And you'll be amazed how much your subconscious will be working on it in the background. And often the solutions come that way, especially in the shower or like 2 a.m. And if that's the case, then make sure you write it down. Like don't assume you're going to remember it. Always write it down. Even if you have to get out of bed to do it, write it down. Number 6, last question. How do you know if you'll work well with an agent? I don't have an agent, so I don't know. From what I know about agents, but also this is going to be mostly informed from what I know about employees, because I have people that work for me, is different, actually. So with an agent, I think the main thing is, like, have they, kind of like what I said at the beginning, like, have they done what you want? Like, have they gotten someone else to where you want to go? Have they been able to work with certain publishers? Have they worked with anybody that's ever done anything like you've done before? Do they have a track record? I think is probably the biggest thing. Whether or not you're going to know if you work well with them or not, like just pay attention to things like how responsive are they, the tone that they use, how interested in your work are they, and like what is it? I guess also setting expectations for what you expect from them, because in a lot of ways agents, I don't know where this is at now, but agents had started to kind of replace what editors used to do as far as like doing some story editing and like getting in and really massaging a manuscript, working with you. So part of it is just saying like, if they do that, do they maintain alignment with where you imagine the story going, or are they trying to change your story in a way that you don't like? You know, are they on the same page? Are you creating something together? Do they feel like a good collaborator and somebody that you'd want to keep working with? Are you excited to work with them? Or do you feel like maybe they don't understand you, maybe they're missing the point? And remember that they ultimately work for you. Like they're there to be a part of your team. And if they don't feel like a team player, then maybe they're not the right one for you. There are a lot of things out there to look out for, a lot of like smarmy, scammy kind of things and whatever else. But as far as like, working with somebody good, I think like it's just a matter of making sure that you feel like you're on the same page. You're both really excited about the project you're working on. And then they have a track record that demonstrates that they have the connections and the know-how to get you where you want to go as far as what they're going to be responsible for. So there you go. Those are those answers. I wonder, you can let me know if you have any more questions, if this was remotely interesting. I have lots of thoughts and opinions on all these things, but I wanted to try and keep this at least relatively concise to answer your questions. And also, thanks for letting me share with everyone out there a little bit of this is probably a part of my life that I've mentioned. I mentioned that I've written books. But I don't really talk about it that much. You can see how much better my design skills got over time too. Like some of these old books, man, the illustrations are amazing because I didn't do those, but the design work, man, I've come a long ways. And that's one of the cool things too. If you just put yourself out there, just write. And maybe that's where I should end this too, because I know that this is probably a thought, again, because it started with a business question, and a lot of these were business questions. You're probably thinking in terms of like writing for a living. I think that I don't know if that's going to be a viable thing for the future. This can be the one moment where we break out of the optimism for a second. I don't know that writing for a living will necessarily be a thing in the future, the way that AI stuff, all this is going. I don't know for sure. Nobody knows how it's going to go. Hopefully, I mean, we would hope that if we automate all the work, all we would have time for is creativity. And so ultimately for me, what has changed for me, I don't see my writing as a road to a financial future anymore, so much as I see it as a form of self-discovery, self-exploration, and self-expression. And I think if you can approach any form of creativity in those ways of getting to know yourself better and then sharing yourself with the world, it's going to be a worthy investment of your time and your energy. One of the greatest ways that you can invest your time and your energy, because you're going to come out the other side really knowing yourself better and hopefully having better connected with those around you. And if for no other reason, then you absolutely should keep writing. And if you enjoy it, if you love it, then keep doing it. And I think that's that. Anyways, thanks for listening. I hope this was good. And since I'm sharing this publicly, I will also thank my patrons who have been with me. A lot of them actually joined me when the ones that I just gave buttons to, the silver play buttons. Almost all of them joined me when I started my Patreon for my writing way back in the day. So they've been with me forever. Saundra Hendricks, today's patron producer, has been with me not quite that long, but I think that's another thing to consider. Is to see if you can figure out a way to find a small community that will support your creative work to move it forward. Because I think that might be the only way that we can keep this going, right? Patronage. Without people that are going to patronize the arts, I don't know what we'll talk more about the future. If you're interested, we'll talk more about the future here soon. But anyways, thanks to my patrons. Thanks, Kaz, for your questions. And I'll see you all bright and early one of these mornings very soon, I'm sure.